So I have this friend from high school who's an INFP personality type, and he was telling me this story about 10 years ago where he's driving aimlessly around the streets of Melbourne. He's about an hour from his house. It's after midnight. I don't know what he was doing. He was just driving aimlessly around. That's what he kind of did. Anyway, he's driving aimlessly around in the inner north of Melbourne, and he comes across this Ethiopian cafe. And there's no customers, but there's one lonely looking Ethiopian guy behind the counter. And my friend feels like he has to go in. He can't just go home now. If he was to go home, he'd feel really bad because this guy looked kind of bored and lonely, and he felt morally obligated to stop his car and go in. Now, unfortunately, my friend doesn't like coffee, doesn't drink coffee, but he thought maybe he will pretend to like coffee just for the sake of this cafe. So he goes inside a little bit nervously. The guy behind the counter says, "Hello." My friend says, "Hi." The guy says, "Can I get you something?" My friend goes, "Can I have a coffee?" And the guy behind the counter says, "Yeah, what coffee do you want?" And my friend goes, "Cappuccino." And there's a bit of a silence, and the guy behind the counter goes, "Okay." Starts making him a cappuccino. A few minutes pass, nothing's said. My friend's just waiting for the cappuccino that he doesn't want. And he gives him the coffee eventually, and my friend takes it and says thank you. And the guy behind the counter says, "Do you play FIFA?" And my friend goes, Yeah, I play FIFA. So they go into the back room of this cafe, and the guy starts up his PlayStation 2, or I don't know what era this was. Maybe it was a PlayStation 2. And they start playing FIFA, and they're going to play a game of soccer. My friend's there with his cappuccino, and he's thinking, okay, well, I'll just choose a country. Maybe I'll choose Italy. And the Ethiopian guy says, "Why'd you choose Italy for?" And my friend thinks to himself, oh no, because this guy's Ethiopian, and my friend's chosen Italy. Italy invaded Somaliland in modern-day Ethiopia in 1937 or something. So my friend's feeling awful, but he's already chosen the team, like the game's already starting. So my friend's feeling awful. He's messed up this situation again, and they start playing, and my friend, he keeps like missing, and the guy keeps shooting goals, and my friend doesn't defend very well. And the guy's asking him, like, "You're not trying very hard." And my friend's thinking, well, he doesn't want to try very hard because he's Italy. He doesn't want to rub it into this Ethiopian guy about the invasion in the late 30s. So the guy wins, and my friend gets up with his coffee and says he thinks he'll go, and he does. He says goodbye and he drives home. And that night he couldn't sleep because of all the caffeine he just had it in the early hours of the morning. It made it very hard for him to sleep because he doesn't drink coffee. But then on the other hand, he wouldn't have been able to sleep at night if he hadn't gone into the Ethiopian cafe out of the guilt of driving past. So either way, he was screwed. And I think this happens a lot with INFPs. Either way, any decision they make, they're kind of screwed morally. And I thought I would reflect in this video about this idea of when INFP, and I guess ISFP, but it's a bit of an INFP thing, I think, to overthink things to this degree. And it's not just using morals, it's like using morals attached to intuition and ideas and concepts. And do you want to be the sort of person who allows, I guess from my friend's point of view, if he didn't stop in that Ethiopian cafe and get that one sale for the guy, maybe the whole cafe would have closed down. Maybe if the cafe closed down, the entire family starts struggling financially. And it's all in some way because of him driving past, if he hadn't stopped. That same friend told me stories years later. Like, he's got so many stories like that. He's just that kind of INFP. He was once driving around aimlessly near a bit closer to where he lives. And he was stopping in at Hungry Jack's, which is the Australian version of Burger King. I won't go into that. But he's going through a drive-through. And a woman starts knocking on his door, asking him to buy her food from the drive-through because she doesn't have a car. And my friend says, he thinks, man, it's a late night. I just want, he just wants some peace. But he says, sure, why not? So the woman gets into his car and asks him to buy a Whopper and some fries. So my friend sits with this woman who, my friend says that she was definitely a sex worker. Yeah, he orders her the fries and the burger and gets himself a burger. And the woman then asks him to drive her home around the block, or drive her somewhere around the block. And my friend actually, believe it or not, says no, I think you better just go by yourself. So it's good to know that my friend does have limits. And then she asked him if he wanted any sexual favours, and my friend said, no, I'm fine. And then she left with her fries and burger and whatever he bought her. So I suppose that story goes to show that even though my friend's an INFP, and you would have thought he would have done the right thing and dropped this woman home, he didn't. He was so selfish as to say that she can go and find her own way home. Very selfish. And he also denied her money in other ways, So quite awful, although I suppose he paid for her lunch, so he's not a completely bad person. Made me reflect on other INFPs. Like, I was walking around the other night with a different INFP friend, and we were going from bar to bar in the city and just chatting. And we started noticing a lot of girls around the city tend to be lying down in gutters throwing up. We spotted quite a few. The first one we saw just on the side of the road was holding her phone. This is 2 a.m. And even by myself, I always wonder, should I just walk off or should I help them? And it's hard to know. Now we've got 2 INFPs, so we're both standing over her, looking at each other nervously. What should we do? Should we help her? I wasn't sure. My friend's got a bigger heart than me. Many INFPs have got bigger hearts than me. He eventually did tap her and say, excuse me, would you like help? And she actually, it was like a zombie apocalypse. She just sort of hissed at us with big white. It was a bit scary. And we just left her alone. It was in the middle of the city. There were quite a lot of people passed out in gutters. So we showed cold-heartedness and we did nothing. We walked away. But in my own life, I'm not much of a do-gooder, let's call it. I'm somebody who has a lot of walls up. It's very difficult for me to... the only time I've ever intervened is once I was in Poland about, 2010, so it's 13 years ago. And I'm walking around in Krakow, however you pronounce it. And there was like this girl who was sunbathing, but it was outside the main station, a very concretey area, but it was summer. So she's lying down and she had maybe 2010, she's got an MP3 player and earphones in. And she's lying down with her eyes closed. And there's these drunken guys outside the station wearing singlets, drinking vodka. And this one big guy starts walking over to her and he starts putting his hands near her like he's going to touch her, but he hasn't touched her, but he's like in an old Max Fleischer cartoon, like there's old Betty Boop cartoons and you've got these monstrous guys with these massive hands. It was like that. It was a bit worrying. And I'm walking around, I'm walking off to the station or whatever I was doing, trying to find a coffee or something. And I didn't know what to do, because if this guy was going to assault her, I can't walk past and allow that to happen and be someone who saw that and didn't do anything. But on the other hand, I'm so non-confrontational, I didn't know what to do. So I just stopped and I walked very slowly towards him and her, but sort of making a lot of eye contact with the guy. But I don't think I had any plan of what would have happened if he did something. I've got no idea what would have happened. But luckily, the fact that I just kept walking closer to this guy until I was that close to him and she's just there, he just saw me and just started screaming at me. Not screaming, but he was yelling at me in Polish and waving his fist at me, but he didn't touch me. And being a stupid guy in his 20s, I just said "niet" because I didn't know any Polish apart from "niet," and that's Russian anyway. "Nie," I think is no in Polish. But anyway, and then he yelled at me and walked off, and yelled at the girl who's now taken her earpods off, and she's a bit shocked at what's going on. But she actually smiled at me, and that's what really scared me. The fact that a girl smiled at me, I quickly rushed off. Oh my God, it's probably the right thing to do either way. I don't think I've got any other stories of me intervening or being put in moral situations. About a week ago, I was purchasing this new watch I was in an expensive shopping mall. I wanted to buy a watch. And I saw a woman come in and start stealing rings, like rings to put around your finger. So this is just a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And she's shoving it in a bag and saying, I'm doing it, I'm doing it, oh, I'm doing it. And then she goes down the escalator and I'm like, oh, should I stop her? Should I tell security? I didn't know what to do. I just wanted to buy a watch. So I looked over at one of the people, the sales staff, a guy, and he saw her doing it and he just walked away. And I thought, well, why am I obliged now to stop this woman who obviously had alcohol issues or something? So I just kept an eye on her and I thought maybe I'm going to try and go up to someone in the sales department to say, you might want to look at this woman who's stealing all your rings. But then I also felt like it's this massive company. And then they've got these big security guards when you exit and, you know, the alarms are going to go off. And so I had morally told myself I don't have to do anything. Despite, I mean, that's just a rationalization, isn't it? I should have done something. She actually came back. She actually came back up the escalators and said, no, I'm putting him back. No, I'm not putting him back. I'm doing it. So she was also having her own moral problems anyway. So who am I to speak? Anyway, there's some random stories about being an INFP and doing what you think might be the right thing or might not be the right thing. I suppose I'm just telling you these stories to start a discussion. Are you an INFP, or have you known any INFPs, or actually it doesn't matter what type you are. What do you do with these moral dilemmas? Tell me your moral dilemmas in the comments. There you go. There's some audience participation. Are you a heartless INFP like my friend who refused to drop that woman home? Or are you a kind INFP? Like, can you think of any kind INFPs? There's quite a lot out there. Belle from Beauty and the Beast. All right, I'll end the video here. Thanks for watching. See you next time.